There he is.
There he is.
All right. Brad, I think one of your farm members came down to Rhode Island and has entered into my office. So I'm going to go take care of that while you take this away for the Thursday. So I'm going to leave it to you. I'm passing over the host. Thank you so much.
This sounds good.
Good luck with that, Jen.
Thank you.
So what happened?
Have a
There's
big
a
one.
bunny.
I just entered the office and we're trying to make sure it's safely out of the office.
That's great. I love
Make
it.
sure you shut the door to the barn.
Exactly. Well, it's funny. We actually just had a Keller Williams agent from Massachusetts come up and pick up a couple of our chickens because they wanted to get some laying hens, and those are hard to find. So there you go. There you go. Well, look at this. Hello, everybody. How we doing?
Fantastic.
Fantastic. Jim Keenan, what's going on in your world, my friend, as we wait for a couple more people to hop on?
Just doing the thing, Brad, doing the thing. Staying busy, though. Metro West is starting to get busy again, which is nice.
Nice. And Mr. Tim Lindsay, thanks for joining us on your radio program. I like it. The sweet melodic tones.
Thanks, buddy.
How are you guys doing in New Hampshire?
Good. A lot of conversations, obviously, from a coaching standpoint. So that's good that they're busy and frenetic, and the escrow accounts are growing, which is also good news.
Yeah. And that's very similar for us here in Portland. I think we've got 35 or 40 closings tomorrow for our office. So that's a nice kickoff to the month. So awesome. So we're diving in here for our third and fourth section for what we're going into here. And so we're going to cover character today, and we're going to cover creating positive change. Again, our guide, our roadmap for this is Developing the Leader Within 2.0, John Maxwell. And as I often say, please, if you would, love to make this a conversation as questions come up, right? David Dow is not hesitant to throw the questions at us. So please feel free to do that. So we're diving into character, and let's hear what John has to say about character. The first thing he does, and he likes to do this as kind of a pattern, is kind of point out the pitfalls. What are some of the pitfalls that we see with character, right? And just going to rattle these off. It's going to be too much and too fast for you guys to necessarily take notes on it, but just, be aware of what we're talking about here, okay? Some of the pitfalls: thinking that we are immortal, immune, or downright indispensable, right? That's a character pitfall, right? Excessive busyness can be a character pitfall when it comes to leadership, right? Poor coordination, right? Excessive planning, right? Getting stuck in that getting ready to get ready mode. Gossiping, grumbling, backbiting, right? These are major problems, especially in a leadership seat. And I know we got multiple leaders on here. It's hard enough to deal with gossiping in your organization, correct? Tim, I'm thinking about you guys down in New Hampshire. 550, 650. How many agents you guys are up to? That's a big group of people. How do we keep the gossiping kind of thing at bay? Well, the first thing we got to do is not do it ourselves as a leader, right? What do you got to add, Tim?
Yeah, I think one of the best lessons when I've been in a room with Nathan, and I'll be standing there. We'll be mid-conversation. Somebody else comes in with an issue to his office, and they want to start right in. And he's like, well, I think I just saw them walk in. Why don't we bring them in here? We can discuss it together as a group, right? Because if you can't discuss it with leadership, if you can't discuss it with that person in the room, it shouldn't be getting discussed.
Right.
We're either building a problem or addressing a problem,
Ooh, write that down. We're either building the problem or we're addressing the problem, right? That's so good. Again, some potential leadership character flaws, indifference to others, right? If we don't actually care about other people, that's a problem. Hoarding, right? Which involves accumulating material, power, resources, a sense of security. Are we doing that for ourselves and not putting others first? So here's a few questions that John gave us to ponder when it comes to developing as leaders and guarding against some of these character flaws. Do I feel superior to those who work for me? And from a real estate perspective, I would challenge you, are you walking into situations where you are feeling superior to your client? Because I would argue that's probably not a healthy place to be. Do I demonstrate an imbalance between work and other areas of my life? If we're looking to show up as a leader, right? Our life as a whole is the picture. Right? Not just this thin subset of how I show up in business. Do I put my own success ahead of the success of others? Right? Am I worried about my commission more than I am worried about the sale of the home or doing the right thing for my client? Right? Do I exhibit selfishness? Right? Am I failing to cultivate fun and joy-filled work environment? Another way to think of that is, am I delivering hope to my clients? Right? These are uncertain times. They're feeling more uncertain than they did 3 months ago, 6 months ago, right? Am I helping them with their emotional transition in the same way that I'm helping myself? Right? I've got to put my client first. I've got the teams that we build, I have to put them first. So John has some character value statements that we'll go through. Character value statements. First off, good character builds strong trust. Good character builds strong trust. And John had an awareness early on in his leadership career, which was he thought trust was kind of a nice thing to have, but not really a foundational thing to have. And one of the examples I love to give on this is, was one that I learned from Diana Kokoska, which was, if you walked into her organization, she put a 10 on your forehead. You're a 10 out of 10. And I'm going to show up as the leader treating you that way. Trust actually begins with the leader exhibiting it out of the gate, right? I'm going to give you full trust and in the hopes of earning yours, right? So, John thought that trust was really up to other people. He thought, if my people learn to trust me, I'll get their attention. But if I initiate trust in my people, I'll get their action. Right? If they learn to trust me, I'll get their attention. But if I initiate it, if I start it, right? If I treat you as a 10 out of the gate, I'm gonna get you into action, right? I'm gonna get you into action. Another piece on this front. John thought that trust could only grow slowly. Thought trust could only grow slowly. I'd love to hear somebody pop off and share where you've seen trust built quickly. Where have you experienced that in your life?
I guess for me, it would be institutional. Like if I'm going to be at my church, within a school system, where it's been explained to me by people that I trust within my family that this is a place that you can trust. I guess that I would walk into church or any place that my family considered a safe place that I would feel trust. That does that make? I don't know if I'm making any sense.
I'm
I'm running into a stranger. I don't immediately trust a stranger.
Right. But there can be a building
certain
block of trust within certain formats, right?
Sure.
Hey,
Yeah.
last year's teacher was somebody I can trust. So this year's teacher should be somebody I can trust, right? Even though it's a totally different person, different class, different everything, right? I might be able to walk in an environment like that and kind of come from a place of trust quicker.
Well, it's almost like a
That's how I'm
referral.
doing
If I'm going to go sit down at a kitchen table and I've been edified by somebody that I'm in relationship with the person that I'm about to sit down with, they are trusting me because they trust the person that sent me to their kitchen table, right? So it's that same thing. If my parents always trusted this institution, then I will, until, like to your point, that I'm slapping a 10 on their forehead until they start to erode that and start to chip away at it and build mistrust with me.
Mm-hmm. In talking with people that are outside of our company who are interested in coming into our company, if an agent in my office creates that introduction, it's easier to build the trust quicker, because what I can do is I can go, Tim, hey, listen, you and I both know Mark Richard, and he said you were somebody I have to meet, and man, far be it from me to not listen to what Mark has to say. So I'd love to get together, right? I'm leaning on that relationship, pulling that shared appreciation for that person. And I think that can help us to get to trust quicker, right? Anybody else think of an example? How do we get to trust quickly?
I think it's when somebody comes in, as you said, with the 10. I like that expression, although I don't think I necessarily give them that benefit of the doubt, so I'll think about that more. But especially when they come in and they perform right away and they perform consistently. It doesn't matter so much if they're a superstar, as long as they're as represented. If they're genuine and they communicate and respond and they're consistent, then at least I can reciprocate and set some mutual expectations, and they're meeting them. So that's when it happens quickly. That was your original question. When does it happen quickly? It happens quickly when somebody displays it quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I'd challenge you, David, of like, okay, how can I initiate that better? I might have a lifetime of lessons that go, be a little bit guarded. And what John's telling us here is, I get that, and initiate the trust. Initiate it. Harry, I see a nice blue hand.
Yes. So I think it's a style thing too. I'm a hopeless optimist, or hopeful optimist, I suppose.
Sure.
And I tend to trust right away unless given reason not to.
Right. And that's very, very well said. It's, I'm going to trust you until you show me exactly why I shouldn't, right?
Yeah.
And on these lines, John also says, I thought a single mistake automatically destroyed trust. My experience on that has been that a mistake that somebody doesn't own is where I've seen trust really eroded. But if somebody makes a mistake and then owns it and then works to make it right, more often than not, I do not see that lead to a degradation of trust. That makes sense?
It's, Brad, I was just going to say, it's interesting with trust, because we do throw that word around quite a bit. Mm-hmm. We trust people on 128 more than we trust people on our business teams.
Right.
When you enter the highway every day, you never even think about it. When you enter in a room every day, you never think about, is there oxygen in that room? You just trust there is. Mm. And these are things we just trust in. It's amazing what we put our trust in. And then when it comes to people, we've allowed that filter, or I've allowed that filter maybe, to be untrusting of, when I know that person way more than I know the person doing 85 next to me on 128.
Right. Yeah. Or I trust the engineer that did the math for the bridge that I'm crossing. Yeah. Even though I've never met the engineer, right? I trust the inspector who inspected the meat that I'm buying from the grocery store, right? So yes, and then we hire somebody and we act all cautious and weird, right? Yeah, I mean, one of the best things that was done to me and I've done to others is I was hired for a role one time, and the first day I'm sitting down and I'm filling in endless numbers of signature cards for bank accounts. Like they're day one, they're adding me to all the banking, giving me all that control, all that responsibility. And then to be able to hire people later on in my career and do the same, like, here's my debit card, here's a credit card for you, here's all my banking information. Here's like, it's just so much easier for me to come from a place of, I either trust you or I don't. There's no middle ground, right? You're either going to be in the house with me or I can't let you in at all, right? So number two for John on this conversation around character, successful leaders embrace the 4 dimensions of character. We'll just pop through those real quick. He lays out 4 dimensions of character. The first one being authenticity. Successful leaders show up as authentic, right? And a great quote that stands out for me is, God would rather us walk with the occasional limp than with a continual strut, right? Like people would rather know that you got a few warts on you, right? Than always looking Teflon shiny. So don't be afraid to be your authentic self, right? I'll say it another way. David, put on the hat, buddy. We love the hat. Self-management, number 2, right? We set young leaders up to fall if we encourage them to envision what they can do before they consider the kind of person they should be. In other words, no matter what on the leadership side, it's an inside-out game. And Gary has told us that so many times, right? He's got a great story in Quantum Leap that, if you first put the man together, then the world will fall into place, right? It has to start here. It has to start internal. So I would just ask you, how are you doing on those first 2? How are you doing with authenticity? How are you doing on self-management? Think about that a little bit. Humility number 3. Humility is saying a radical yes to the human condition. A radical yes to the human condition. There's a great quote in this, and I'm gonna give it to you right now. It's actually in the later section. One second. Where are you? Here you go. Success leads to the greatest failure. Say that again. Success leads to the greatest failure, which is pride. Failure leads to the greatest success, which is humility and learning. What do you hear when you hear that?
Do you repeat the second half, please?
Yeah, I'll read the whole thing. Success leads to the greatest failure, which is pride. Failure leads to the greatest success, which is humility and learning. Harry, you still got your hand up. I don't know if that's new or old.
It's old.
It's still lovely. It's still lovely, just like you.
Thank you.
Yes. To me, that was a piece that really resonated of, I think people get so tied up in, I've got to succeed. I can only tell the world about my successes, right? And yet we see these little glimpses of people who, when they show up really authentic and they talk about their challenges and their failures, we're actually drawn to them in a much deeper way. So that was humility. And our 4th one is courage, right?
Hey, Brad.
Yes.
I just want to bring up, this reminds me of one of Diana's journal entries from the beginning of, gosh, I think this is Bold 1.0. So it's going way back. And it talks about contentment and how contentment is the opponent of forward motion and of success, because contentment is like the first step towards death. And I think that's encapsulates what you're saying there. Like, once you reach the point of hubris or pride, like it's almost too late for you, unless you can somehow shift back into an area of humility and ability to learn, or desire to learn.
I think Harry, I think we're going to see a lot of business owners in our industry, outside our industry, coming through and wherever this COVID piece takes us, and they're just not going to be willing to shift away from that contentment, right? They'd spent years building this thing that is kind of in a bubble, and now the world is really changing around them, and it's going to force discomfort. It's going to force change, right? I mean, Lily, who's on here in our office, she owns a restaurant as well as a real estate business. And every restaurant has to change. If they're going to open, they have to change. And I know there are some restaurant owners that are already gone, forget it. I'm not going to do it. Not going to do it. I'm good. I don't have one more downturn in me. I don't want to have one more cycle of kind of learning and reinventing myself. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. And I think the humility piece that I would hope each of us bring is, as people in your world struggle with that change, bring some empathy to that, if you would. Be empathetic, right? Because all of us, I think, fall into that complacency piece, or hey, I've kind of arrived in this little area of my life and I don't want to see that interrupted. I know my conversation with my wife constantly is, when can we be done working on the house? Well, to Harry's point, I hope it's never, right? I hope it's a constant, like, let's constantly be working to improve and adjust and change. And I'm not saying we got to tear it down and rebuild it every year, but hopefully it's a progressive thing. Last one here on character. Character makes makes you bigger on the inside than on the outside. Character makes you bigger on the inside than the outside. Self-respect is produced by inner triumphs, not external ones. Self-respect is from those internal wins, right? I can picture a couple that felt like internal wins to me. And where was I when those kind of moments happened? And inevitably they were, a phone call, a piece of mail, something like that. And there was just this moment of like, yes, accomplish that thing. No one really knows it but me, but it has built a kind of this foundational piece of character of, if you really put that time in, you put that work in, right? Some fruit will come from it. Thoughts on character. We're going to move into creating positive change in just a minute, but I'd love to hear a couple of thoughts on what John had to say about character as a really important thing as it pertains to leadership.
Getting back to what Harry said, with contentment, we've always, I think within our market centers, we're always looking to out hustle yesterday's version of us, right? And with that being, I don't even like the word happy here. I think joyful and not satisfied. There's always growth, right? I think happy's too bland for what we do here at Keller Williams, right? So joyful but not satisfied, and then above and beyond that, it's moments like this that are uncovering our character.
Yes.
Right. Like, I don't think any of us arrive with we put the 10 on our foreheads when we arrive, and the leaders that brought us on and hired us gave us that 10. And then I think it's moments like this that continue to uncover our character. I remember when all of this started, I said to Nate, we're we as a company are wired for this. This is our moment. We are wired for this as Keller Williams with everything that's going on, all the script. We didn't invent God character. I mean, sorry, God, family, and business. That was in the lobby years ago, right? We're just uniquely wired for this moment, and it's uncovering our character. And not that we're all perfect, although I think those of us that are taking the time to be leaders right now on this call and spend time relearning, Maxwell, and spending time with you and going over this and filling our sails with air again to go back into my next call at 2:00, that's what this is all about. It's uncovering our character every day. It's chipping away at us and, remolding us for tomorrow.
Right. Thank you, Tim, for that. Yeah. I mean, I'll do a shout out for Mark Richard, who's on here with us. Mark and I have worked together since the beginning of me getting into real estate. I would maybe a year in when we really crossed paths, but the last 2 months, he and I have been able to work much closer together, all virtual, right? But, we quickly pivoted, created a morning call, started at 8:30, runs for about an hour. And just up until the last week or so, Mark and I were doing that together how much did we really prep for those? I think we maybe had 2 very short conversations about just kind of overall structure, and then bam, just go. But that comes from 12 to 15 years of living in the same soup, right? Like there's a common dialogue, there's a common goal, there's a common set of moral underpinning. Like none of that is in question at all. And so it just allows for action to happen so much quicker. Other thoughts on character?
This is Karen Wanshoff.
Hi, Karen.
I learned a lot about myself in a boat class. They had us line up 2 by 2. And I was the agent. The other person was the client.
Yeah.
They were supposed to close their eyes. And, most agents would take their client and start moving.
Right.
I stood there. They held on to me. And then I guided them through the obstacles. And that told me a lot about myself. And I saw, yes, that's how I do real estate. You come to me on your level, and then I guide you through.
Guide you.
Yeah. And I think of that every day.
Yeah.
Who I am and how I work.
That's so great. I remember walking through that exercise too, and how in tune one had to be with the person they were guiding, and how the best ones were always asking for feedback, right? They'd guide them some and then say, how are you doing? How are you feeling? What can I change? Geez, would you slow down a little bit? Yeah, absolutely. Let's slow it down a little bit, Melissa, did you have something?
Yeah, Melissa Richter here. One of the things with character that resonates with me is if you look around at your team, and if you think you're working with a bunch of jerks, well, like attracts like.
Oh, dang it.
So if you're looking at character and people and you want to know about their internal character, you look at the people who they surround themselves with. Or yourself, if you need a little mirror, look at the people you surround yourself with.
Well, I remember distinctly working with an agent who wasn't Keller Williams down in Connecticut. And every time I met with her, she was distraught, stressed to the max. You've all met agents who are in that place. And yet I would look at her production, and there was a big disconnect. She didn't do that much real estate compared to the stress that she was carrying from the real estate. And the reality is she attracted incredibly needy clients. And she was an incredibly needy person. And, every time I met with her, it was like she was just coming from, helping somebody trash out their house. I'm like, Have them call somebody that does that for a living. Oh, they got no money, they got no this and everything. And I get every one of us has done stuff like that at some time. This was every deal. Every deal, she became the personal assistant to the person that owned the house. Every time. So yes, yeah, if the people you're surrounding yourself with, right, have consistent character flaws, it may be something that you're attracting because of a similar set of flaws.
I think the adage goes, we don't attract what we want. We attract that which we are.
Mm-hmm.
Good point, Melissa.
Mm-hmm. All right, so here we go. And we can change, right?
That's right.
We can change. We can make a proactive choice to make a change in those areas. And that's what I love about how John points out, like, you need to pay attention to some of these potential flaws. No one thinks they're greedy, but we all know greedy people, right? No one thinks they're greedy, but we all know greedy people. All right, so here we go. Creating positive change. And John really lays this out that, being able to turn an organization around by being a positive change agent is a true test of great leadership. And one of the baseline examples I think I can give to that on real estate is something as simple as a listing expires and you're able to walk in. It's the same house, it's the same seller, you're the only difference, and you're able to turn into a much more successful outcome for the client, right? You become that agent of change. So, from that to, we'll see where this can go. Being that kind of positive change agent is a great test of leadership. John says that there's a real parallel between leadership and coaching. And Tim, I know you live this every day. John lays out 3 main qualities plus a bonus on the qualities of a coach. Number 1, they don't take anything for granted. And I think, if I'm thinking about Harry in Massachusetts, like, you've got to be able to walk into that listing appointment or that buyer appointment, and just because they look like somebody you've worked with in the past or similar story or similar goals or something like that, we can't take anything for granted. We've got to be asking powerful questions to really understand where are they at, where their heart's at, what are they looking forward to, what are they looking to do? So out of the gate, we're not going to take anything for granted. Number 2, we're going to be an excellent teacher. And I think Gary Keller is such a great example of that for us. Not only in his passion around it, but also his ability to take complex ideas and simplify them. And I think the best teachers do that because it makes the material that much more accessible and consumable. And a great coach is organized. They are organized. And I will say, I do find that there's a lot of great coaches that are organized in front of the curtain, as it were. In other words, with your client, with what your client's interaction with the business, right? It should look like we've got our act together. And as Gary's taught us in a lot of his different teachings, right? There's going to be some stuff that falls on the floor, but that should be behind the curtain stuff, right? Our client not only shouldn't see it, they shouldn't experience it, right? So don't be too tough on yourself if there's a few stacks of paper sitting around your desk. And then last one that he lays out is really we need to be a positive visionary. A leader needs to be a positive visionary if we're going to create that positive change. And I think that the key word to me there is not actually the visionary part, it's the positive part. All of this is going on in the world, and here is this positive, hopeful direction that we're heading in, right? In spite of everything that's happening, this is the hope, this is the vision, right? And it's something we can be drawn to. And I love, Tim, how you said that, kind of the difference between happy and joy, I think is in this level of positivity, right? A cookie can make me happy, right? Because I like a cookie. But a cookie does not bring me joy, right?
The whole box brings you joy, Brad.
Yes, thank you, Tim. That's exactly what I was talking about. And if you, I'll put in chat my mailing address, and everybody can help me out with that. It's usually much deeper things that are the wellsprings of joy, right? You know, remembering back to some transactions that I experienced where you've really made a difference in somebody's life, or somebody, you know, handed you a referral that really needed to be handled very smartly, very well, was going to be challenging, and you were able to execute on that. There's joy that can come from that. Obviously, hopefully some of your deep personal relationships are really going to bring joy to the table. And that can happen with clients, with team members, you know, across the board. So leading change can be difficult. Again, what are some of our pitfalls here? Well, number one, people feel awkward and self-conscious doing something new. People feel awkward and self-conscious doing something new. So here's the test, right? Because some of you are like, yeah, I don't think so. All right, do this for me. Take your hands. Let me see them. Some of you are on no video. I trust you're doing this anyway. Now, fold your hands together like, you know, just hold them there together comfortably, right? Fingers entwined in each other, right? Now notice which thumb is on top. Now do it again and put the other thumb on top. How weird does that feel? That feel like you've got to think about it? It's kind of awkward and weird, yes?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just your thumb. Imagine if we actually have to do something new, right? Different feels uncomfortable, right? Here, whatever your dominant hand is, hold your pen in the other hand and try to write your name.
Brush your teeth with your left hand.
Say it again, David.
Brush your teeth with your left hand, or
Brush
your
your
opposite
teeth with
hand.
your left hand. Yeah. I played percussion instruments growing up, all through middle school and high school. And one of the classic challenges for a drummer or somebody who plays timpani or whatever is that because you have a dominant hand, it's easier to adopt the skills with the dominant hand than it is with the other hand. And one of the things that my instructor stressed for me to do over years was some basic, simple things that you do all the time. Start doing them with your non-dominant hand. Open every door with your left hand. Brush your teeth with your left hand, right? And that helped build, you know, a coordination and a muscle that made it easier to start translating into the percussion instruments. But again, just keep that in mind that everybody experiences that, right? People feel awkward. We don't like to be there. The vast majority of us want to look good and be right. We want to look good and be right. So when you go to make a change, I'm setting you up for discomfort. I'm setting you up for discomfort, so I've got to be sensitive to that. People do not naturally resist change. I think this is really important to hear this way. People do not naturally resist change. They resist being changed. It's not the change itself that's resisted. They resist the change that's going to happen in here. That feeling that they're going to experience. Number two of the pitfalls, people initially focus on what they will have to give up. They focus on what they will have to give up when it comes to change, right? For everything you gain, you lose something. Give me an example of that in your business. Give me an example of you've gained in your business and what you had to give up in the process. We've got some powerful business owners on here.
Well, I think as we grow and scale our businesses without fail, in order to give more of yourself, you have to relinquish some time, right? I keep thinking of when they ask, because we've heard this a lot on the James Shaw calls, you know, and it came up just last week too, and I keep thinking about it and asking my agents, what are you doing in your business or your personal life that if you stopped doing it, no one would notice, right? Because we all run our calendars, and you can easily block off here, there, and everywhere. And I know anytime that I don't open my calendar wide open, and you can go to Meet with Coach and book, and if I want to protect my time for a call like this, I had to block this off. Otherwise, my agents would have grabbed those 30 minutes.
Yes.
Right. So in order for me to grow and to pour into my agents, I have to give up, that break that I could have taken. Today and tomorrow, I'm flat out. I'll have 9 one-on-ones, 2 classes, and Ignite in the afternoon.
Right.
And that speaks to how I'll feel at the end of the day. I'll feel fried, not zapped, if that makes sense. Because I know the energy I'll expend throughout the day, I'm giving to other people, and that's just something we have to be willing to give up. And you can walk into the office saying this is going to be a really full day. It's going to be a day full of joy, though.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. You can have joy and be physically spent all at the same time, right? Harry, I see a hand, and then David.
So I experienced this morning in just the simplest terms. I put a listing on, and I was thinking through like my next several days and how I was going to handle it. And I thought it made me think back to a time a couple of years ago when, like probably most of you, I got my start with buyers. I worked with, scores of buyers before I ever had taken a listing. And I remember thinking back to a time when I couldn't have been more comfortable with buyers and couldn't have been more uncomfortable putting a listing on the market and knowing that I had the confidence to do it properly. And I put it on this morning. I didn't even bat an eyelash. I'm like, wow, I think I finally have my system down. And then just in this call, I'm thinking, okay, well, what did I have to give up to be able to add that skill? And that's kind of where I got bogged down. But I suppose that, I am choosing to work with buyers less. And I'm giving up the comfort of something that I know that I can do in my sleep in order to grow.
Yeah. I mean, it's a trade-off. I only have so many people I can work with at any given time. And I'm making a choice to go in this direction. That piece is new. There's some discomfort there. And I'm walking away from my cozy couch, right, to head towards somewhat of the unknown. David?
I was just going to comment on Tim's comment that I like what he said about what is it that I could drop and no one would notice. And my comment is it sounds like the opposite of the one thing. It really is. So, one thing that'll make everything else less necessary or easier or eliminate, and what can I drop? Because I'm always struggling, as most of us are, with time management and trying to try something new, which you never have time for. But unless you do, and drop something out the bottom, then you can never improve, necessarily what you're doing or the mix of what you're doing. So unless the one thing you're doing is ultimately, wildly successful, you got to always be, mixing and matching and finding time to try new things. So something's got to give.
I like it. Kimon, you had a hand up? Oh, and then Melissa, I'll come back to you.
Yes, I am thinking even most recently with us shutting down for COVID and the kids being home from school and having to integrate their schedule and keep my lead gen time and keep my workout time. I had to give up sleep. So I had to adjust my schedule. I could have easily have said, oh, to heck with the workout schedule, or the heck with the lead gen schedule. Nobody's going to be buying now. Everybody is scared and hunkering down, right? However, there is a goal that I have to all those circles in my life, and the kids being home from school wasn't a reason to throw in the towel on any of those goals. I had to figure out how is it I needed to be able to adjust to be able to pick up the extra time that I needed to keep all things in the air.
Right. Love it. Melissa?
Mine is the hardest for me, and I'm still struggling with it, is the entrepreneurial to the purposeful.
Mm.
You can't lead people in entrepreneurial very effectively. And purposeful gives up, you have to go to be purposeful, in my opinion, could be my drunk monkey. I have to give up some freedom of flexibility.
Right.
And off the cuff and
Winging
all
it.
those things, although winging it, the things I just live for,
Right. Yeah.
is that, but you have to lead by example. And what I can wing, others, I can't teach that, right? That's not multiplication. That's not multiplying me. That's so the entrepreneurial piece, what's the next greatest thing? Or what's that, what can I try next or what can I do next? But the purposeful part with the calendar and the schedule and the people and the fitting it all in and being on, because you have to make your calls because you're making sure everybody else makes their calls. And so losing that bit of freedom is a greater good. I understand it. I still struggle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's Mark. One of the things that really was convicting for me in Bold, and those of you who don't know, Mark Richards, one of our great Bold coaches, was learning that spontaneity was a conditioned response. That was just as conditioned as structure, right? Because it's my natural go-to gear, right? The wing it gear is just as kind of structured in my life as being purposeful, right? If it's the default and it's what I go to all the time, then actually that's a freaking pattern, right? And having that awareness was like, oh, I guess I'm not the creative off the cuff guy I thought I was. And maybe it would help everybody if I add a little more structure in, right?
Yeah. In the bowl room as a bowl coach, and maybe we have some aspiring bowl coaches on the call, if you go 30 seconds off on every topic that you teach over an 8 hour, there's very few people that perform for 8 hours straight on stage. Yeah. If you go 30 seconds off on every topic, and there's typically 8 to 9 topics, what happens in that room. Conversely, if you had somebody do a time management study on you and your business, and if they were able to help find you 15 minutes a day, and it could be 15 minutes that you're choosing to sleep or 15 minutes that you're choosing to just slough off, that's 91 hours. That's 2.5 weeks. What would you do with an additional 2.5 weeks this upcoming year?
That's as much time as most people take off for vacation for the whole year.
And that's just 15 minutes a day. And we all could honestly look at each other and say, because when you attempt to manage time is an energy, right? All you have to do is look at the clock when you're doing something you like, and you'll see it goes faster. If you manage priorities, then we get more done. So thank you, Mr. Pareto.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, our last one on here. People personalize change and may feel alone in the process. As we work to roll out change in our businesses with the people that we work with, just understand that people are going to feel alone in that. And again, I think if you bring empathy to it, if you show them that you're all going through it, I think it is one of the gifts of what's going on right now, is because it is affecting the whole world to some extent. It's easier to look at a stranger and go, I get it. I see what you're having to do because I'm having to do as well. And I'm not saying that's across the board. Obviously, there are people in the world who have it so much harder than I do, even though we're all living through COVID at the same time. But a commonality in the struggle can help to really quickly build bonds. So that's what I love about like a shared lead gen time, right? Whether we do it in the Bold room or we're doing it in a PC program like Tim's got, if we can lead generate together as a group, I can see that, oh, Harry's a little hesitant about picking up the phone too. I thought I was the only one. And then we both pick up the phone together and we start doing together and we start getting the fruit of that together, and we can kind of work through it, break out of it. So the last piece I wanted to give you here is an acrostic that John has for creating positive change. And it's basically a process, but the acrostic is off of plan ahead. Plan ahead. So the P, for those taking notes at home, the P is predetermine the change that is needed. Predetermine the change that is needed. The L is lay out your steps. So we got to predetermine the change that's needed. In other words, where are we going? Where are we going? Plan out the lay out the steps, right? What is the route we will take to get there? The A is adjust your priorities. Adjust your priorities. Because obviously, whatever we've been doing, if we're going to head in a different direction, we cannot continue to do. There has to be change. And then N for the plan is notify key people. I've got to have the key people involved in this on the same page. They've got to understand where it is we're going, the steps we're going to take, and the adjustments that need to be made. And then the ahead part, A, allow time for acceptance. Again, bring that empathy and authenticity, humility, bring that to bear and allow time for people to accept. I can't remember the specific scenario, but I remember working on a project and then, having to go to people who were working on the project with me to say, hey, I know we were heading in this direction and now we're going over there. And someone going, but I just spent the last 3 days building this other thing. Like, I get it. And we're going in a different direction. So there's going to be a little bit of mourning that can happen with that, right? The H for head into action. Head into action, right? Yes, have some time for acceptance. Yes, kind of have some sensitivity to that. And we got to get our feet moving. Again, one of my favorite scenes in one of my favorite movies is the in Gettysburg, the movie. They're at the Battle of Little Round Top, and Chamberlain has just realized that they have to commit to a bayonet charge because they're out of ammunition. They have no bullets left. The Confederates are coming up the hill again, and they're committing to this bayonet charge. And he's laying out the plan to the guys he's in direct command over. And you can see it on their faces. They all get it. They understand it. They understand that that's the next thing that they need to do. And there's just like pregnant pause of like, okay. And he has to tell them, move. There's this acceptance time that has to happen. And then we have to help people get into action. All right, let's go. Let's get it going, right? I can tell you with my children, waking up with our little farm that we've got going here, there are times where I have to grab my daughter's legs and pivot her around the bed and then drag her off the bed so that her body's weight tips her up. Like, we gotta go, right? And the good thing is, that's only been the first few weeks, Now she's doing it more on her own, right? E, expect problems. E, expect problems. I'll say it another way. If you're a leader, shame on you if you don't plan on problems happening. What day in your life did not bring a challenge to the table? Right? Of course there's going to be road construction on your road trip. Of course there is. Of course you're going to get a flat tire with your trunk full of all of the vacation gear, right? Plan for it. It's bound to happen. A, always point out the successes. Got to point out the successes. And some of us, and I lump myself in that group, are not particularly well wired for that, right? Some of us get a little too focused on where we're going to pause for a moment and go, man, high five. Way to go on that step of the process. I've had to purposely, over the last bunch of years in leadership, make sure that people on the team understood how bad I was at that and empower them who were good at it to make sure we were doing it as a team. Because otherwise, I'll go the whole freaking year and not recognize anybody for anything. I'm just like, no, that's what your paycheck's for. Come on, let's go, right? And that's not right. John's telling us, right? We've got to point out the successes. We have to. We got to take time for that. And then lastly, we want to daily review our progress. Right? Well, I'll ask you this. If you don't like the daily, that's fine. How far are you willing to go off track before you measure for adjustment? Are you okay missing a month? Hey, if you're okay missing a month, then great. Only measure it once a month. But there's some stuff, if you're flying a commercial airplane, they're measuring their course milliseconds and making micro adjustments, right? So for big changes in our business, it's probably got to be daily. How did we do on the calls, right? That system we put in place, how many leads did it bring in? How have our conversions on our buyers gone over the last 3 days? Positive feedback loop. Hey, we put in 6 offers today and nothing stick. Shoot, what changed? Oh, market's trended up. We gotta coach them to offer more. We gotta get them to get some of those inspection contingencies off or minimize them or whatever, right? Daily review your progress. Thoughts on this section before I let you go? We got a couple of minutes. Harry, you still got your hand up, buddy. I love it. I love the enthusiasm.
It's more just lack of technical know-how.
Well, I'll let you call that out, right? I'll let you call that out.
I think with what we just covered, Brad, excuse me, like the 15th protocol comes to mind.
Yes.
And then walking that back to Wednesday of the week, and then walking that back to 12 noon of the day, right? We talked to James Shaw, somebody on the call this morning with James Shaw talked about, never mind win the day, win the morning. Right. Because it sets up for the second half of the day. And if you're winning the morning, you're probably winning your lead gen. If you're winning your lead gen, you're crushing it. Right. And that falls right back to what's the one thing I need to do that such by doing, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary.
Correct. Our staff meets at 8 o'clock every morning. One of the pieces that we do is a roundtable. What's your top 20%? And how will you get it done by noon? Right. And tomorrow, if you come to the table going, I didn't get it done, the team is stepping in going, how can we help? What's getting in the way? How can I keep that distraction off your plate? That's an important thing. We all agreed on it. We got to make sure it happens. Love that. Love that. Other thoughts? David, sir. You are muted, sir.
Okay, I have a quick question. It's not maybe not so quick, but you can answer it quickly. Okay. It's about fitting in management. You're talking about, I've got a relatively new team.
Yep.
And I don't manage every day.
Sure.
I don't talk to them every day.
Yep.
We talk once a week and blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And in listening to this, I'm feeling guilt or remorse because I'm not making enough time for management, but they're not babies either. These are experienced agents. So I'm just wondering what comments you would have about where and how to fit in the time for management and know that you're and getting a feedback loop so you know you're affecting. Because I can tell that some are very active and some are not.
Yep.
End of question.
You know what I realized? I have a team up in our office here who they were doing group meetings once a week. Group meetings once a week. And then somewhat out of the blue, 2 people left the team. And in kind of our coaching requirement, in our coaching conversation, I said, well, how often are you meeting with your team members one-on-one? Like, oh yeah, we got away from that. Okay, so if they were having issues, if they were dissatisfied, if they had some conflict conversation to have with you, what I just heard was you didn't really create an environment where they could have a predictable place to come and talk to you about that. So that to me is a piece of it, David, is I want to have frequent enough conversation that we can't get very off track, right? Now, depending on the structure of your team, maybe you can do weekly, right? But understand that if, what I've realized is that if I'm going to meet with somebody weekly, that almost always turns into about 40 times a year, not 52. Right?
Yeah.
So I love setting stuff up for more frequent, knowing that, hey, some life stuff's going to happen. I got one of our staff members who's just had emergency surgery. Like, that wasn't on our plan. Like, that wasn't on our GPS anywhere on the 411, right? So, I also like the Jack Welch quote, which is the, what did you spend the majority of your time doing, right? Sharing the vision, casting the vision. Great. What do you wish you did more of? Share the vision, cast the vision, right? There's some of this stuff, especially as you're building the team, Dave, Sell Mom's House. I don't think we can over communicate it, right? It also, I find too, especially with members of a team, if I'm over delivering on the resources, especially for all of us salespeople, it makes me as a person on your team have to look in the mirror. You've taken away all of my excuses. It's all now I've got to do the push-ups. You can't do them for me. I got to do them. So if they're not getting done, they're just me. As opposed to, well, David doesn't really spend much time with me. Kind of feel like I'm on my own here, right? So, I think what your gut has said is, probably needs to be a little bit more than what it's been. Now, maybe is that a kickoff meeting Monday morning and then a check-in, Wednesday afternoon, something quick, it doesn't have to, these don't have to be 2-hour meetings, right? But just having a pulse on it.
Brad, one of the blessings for us with COVID was that we increased the frequency of our leadership meetings.
Yes.
We're on 8:00 Zooms, Nathan and the whole crew. You brought up Jack Welch. I love his other quote, God bless him, because he stepped away from planet Earth this year.
That's right.
Jack Welch I love his quote, and you could say business or personal. Your business will rise. Your businesses will rise and fall with the content and frequency of your conversations. And then go to Fierce Conversation, Susan Scott, right? The conversation is the relationship, right?
Correct. Yep.
Well, I only ever texted that agent. I can't believe they left the market center.
Right.
I think your answer is right there, right? So we've become really purposeful about making sure that we're making birthday calls and all that kind of stuff. And I think if to your point, when people are joining Bold and they get their scripting partner and we're going to do it a couple times a week. Human life creeps in, and then 2 times a week turns into no times a week. I think the more often we're meeting, and span of control for David, it doesn't have to be him touching on everybody in his team. Just have your director of operations do that 5 at 5 call. And if something needs to get escalated to David, it gets escalated to David. Other than that, there is a touch every day where people are checking in on their one thing, right? Mm-hmm. Thanks for your time today. I've got to jump into my 2 o'clock.
No, we all got to go. So we'll be back here tomorrow, 1 o'clock. It will be a little shorter because we're just going over one section. Thank you all. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Brad.
Wait, Brad, how do we get missed?
The New England region has a YouTube channel, and they're recorded there, I've been told.
Okay.
Jen Bovey would be the person I would reach out to because she's coordinating this.
Okay. Thank you.
If you text me to remind me, I'll send you her info.
Yeah, I've done a few little thingies on the side chat, so I was hoping it would come. But okay, I will find it.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you
Bye, everybody.
so much.
Bye.
Bye.